God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations in all of our hearts be pleasing in your sight. Amen. So a couple weeks ago, I was driving in bumper-to-bumper traffic in downtown Washington, D.C. And I saw them. They stood out, these two men. It was a thronging sidewalk of people from every curve of the earth. Some were carrying fancy Coach bags, and others had garbage bags full of their worldly possessions. And it was so hot, hotter than we can imagine here in Maine. All the women were wearing short skirts and sleeveless blouses, the men in Bermuda and khaki shorts. But these two young men were wearing white long-sleeve shirts and solid-colored ties and pleated pants and patent leather shoes, wearing backpacks. And they walked through the inferno with these big, wide Midwestern smiles on their faces that said, "Nice weather we're having today. Can I tell you the good news of Jesus Christ?" And I noted, just driving by them, I had this adverse internal reaction. And then I felt a little guilty for quickly judging them. It's not like they were flashing gang signs or wearing white power t-shirts, selling drugs. They were just two young men, probably Mormon missionaries, doing their year of public service, witnessing to their faith, not unlike Jesus sending young men out as disciples 2 by 2 in his day. So I thought, why such a negative reaction? Now, we know Jesus said to those first disciples who were fishermen, "I will teach you to fish for people. I'll send you out." It was a metaphor for giving them a new calling, a new vocation. But the flip side is, not many of us want to be on the hook, right? Who wants to be a part of the daily catch? When we start looking at people as, yeah, there's some we're going to grab and get them on our team, we've maybe missed the point. And I think the offensiveness sometimes is that we've all had these experiences of religious people who are pushy, judgmental, annoying. The offensiveness may come from this sense that we have the one true path, and you need to get on it to be right with God, or you're going to be left behind. And I think a lot of Protestant denominations, we've repented of some of the maybe paternalistic, even imperialistic attitudes about evangelism. I was on what once was called the World Mission Board of the United Church of Christ when we changed our name to Global Ministries. And we referred to churches in other countries as our global partners. We were partners. We weren't bringing the truth to other people who didn't have it, but it was more mutual. And it's remarkable to me, just in the last 20 years, how multi-faith our world has become. You know, when I went to seminary, we hardly discussed that Christianity came out of Judaism and that Jesus was a Jew. And in the last 20 years, it's remarkable to me how much interfaith dialogue has taken place as we've recovered that. And I bet most of you in this room have either had a mindfulness meditation class or you go to yoga. Am I right?
Yes.
Some of you even teach yoga or mindfulness. These are gifts from Buddhism, from Hinduism, from Eastern religions. I have an entire shelf in my library of Eastern religious practices that I found very helpful in my own Christian spiritual practices. It's a very different world. I don't think I'm serving the world by trying to convince a Buddhist or a Hindu or a Muslim to be a Christian necessarily. In fact, Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist spiritual teacher, said, when I talk with a Christian, I want to help them be better Christians. And I hope that they will make me a better Buddhist. I think that's the right attitude. So, I'm not going to read this passage and send you all out 2 by 2 to knock on doors or pass out tracts at Hannaford's. Most likely you would find that demoralizing. Do you know the average Mormon missionary gets 1 to 3 converts for a year of full-time service? We're just not that good at taking rejection. You know, the best salespeople aren't necessarily the brightest or the most articulate. The best salespeople are the ones that can hear 10 no's and at 4:30 in the afternoon still make that cold call because this could be the one. And yet, despite that low success rate, the Mormon Church is the fastest growing religious movement in the world. In comparison, the Episcopal Church did a study of how many times a typical Episcopalian invites someone to church. Once every 27 years. I'm sure we do better than that. But here's the challenge I feel. As a part of the United Church of Christ, a denomination that I was attracted to. I grew up Baptist. I went to seminary. I came to the United Church of Christ because it values tolerance, that it welcomes questions, that it allows for some ambiguity and some wrestling of faith, that we are open to LGBTQ people, that we don't force creeds on people to be a part of us. And this is wonderful. But you know, since I've been ordained, the United Church of Christ has gone from 1.7 million people to 700,000. You don't have to be a math major to realize we've lost 1 million people since I was ordained in 1989. And the thing that bothers me, you know, there's a lot of organizations that aren't having, you know, bowling leagues don't have as many members, and baseball teams, and it's not just the church, it's a decline in social capital everywhere, except here's what bothers me. Hate groups. White power, neo-Nazi, all kinds of hate groups are up 50% in the same time. 50%. And their influence on our culture is rising, probably more powerful than the United Church of Christ, and possibly the traditional Protestant denominations. And do we accept that that's our inevitable future? And this is an important question I'm asking about mission, because it's not in our nature to proselytize, to go out and convert people to our faith community. But there's another word that's in our mission statement: welcome. We welcome everyone. In 2004, the UCC launched the God is Still Speaking campaign 20 years ago. And the goal was to become a church of extravagant welcome. And we said some great things. I found some of the quotes from back then. This campaign is not just about bringing people to church. It's about shaping a different kind of church, where all of God's people find belonging and meaning and purpose. We believe faith is a journey, that a church should be a place where you don't have to leave your questions or your identity at the door. And here's something really valuable and important that happened through that campaign. We had, let me check, 600 open and affirming churches, LGBTQ open and affirming churches in 2004. We now have more than 1,600. That's more than 1,000. 177% if you like math like me. That's remarkable. But here's the thing, I think a lot of people believed then that if we just got on the cutting edge of culture, that we welcomed gay people, that this was going to solve all our problems. You know, we had membership problems before 2004, right? I mean, churches have been declining since the 70s, really. And so there was this thought that this is what we'll do, and people will see how open-minded and welcoming we are, and we're going to fill the pews again. And 1 million people later, we realized that maybe that wasn't enough. We did some good work. I think the United Church of Christ played a critical role in marriage equality in this country, in getting rights for LGBTQ people, and I value that. But maybe we're called deeper. That extravagant welcome isn't just saying our doors are open and we're tolerant people, come on in. But maybe the challenge is we need to walk more closely with those who are marginalized and suffering, to bless, to serve. And I was looking at this passage about what Jesus said to the 72 as he sends them out. The harvest is plentiful. Don't carry a lot of baggage. Bless people and know when to shake the dust off your feet. So Jesus said to them, you know, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. And I wonder if we've stopped believing that. That this malaise of inevitability has set in, that we think that Christianity and religion is just going to continue to decline, our country's going to secularize, and we're just going to die off with the baby boomers. And I want to give a couple reasons why I don't think that's true and why decline isn't inevitable. So at the same time, while church attendance has declined precipitously, a belief in God, a higher power, something that transcends us, of love in the universe, is remarkably unchanged. 4 out of 5 Americans say that they believe in a God or some kind of higher power beyond themselves. So my point is, this is not a death of God crisis. It's a religious organization crisis, a very human crisis. And I think if congregations that show a spiritual life that feels real and honest and grapples with the challenges of life, that feels like there is a living God who inspires us to love more fully, will live and grow. And I'm also hopeful, so some recent data, you know, since the COVID-19 pandemic, just lots of people decided they didn't need to go back to church. And one of the interesting things is the generation that has bottomed out and is coming back to church is Generation Z. Those who are 30 or younger are coming back to church. If we had people 30 or younger in Boothbay Harbor, we might see that too, right? It's kind of tough out there, right? Like, ask Christina, right? And you're over 30. Yeah. But that generation is coming back. You know the generation that's declining the most in church attendance? Baby boomers. Now, granted, a lot of them can't walk anymore, but that's, you know. But there's been a loss of community, a loss of connection. There is an opportunity, I think, if we're willing to reach out and be who we need to be. And one of the things Jesus said is to travel light. He said to his disciples, don't take an extra purse or a bag or sandals. Now, some people took the sandals part too literally. Jeannie mentioned the Carmelites. They split over wearing shoes. And there was the calqued and the decalqued Carmelites, depending on whether you wore shoes or didn't wear shoes. And I think that's maybe a little too literally. You can wear whatever shoes you want. Whoever you are, whatever shoes you wear, sandals, whatever. But where was I? Got lost in the whole shoe thing there, right? Baggage. Baggage, right? Don't have too much of it. The more baggage you carry, the harder it is to be a force for love. Sometimes we have so much religious tradition and the way we do things and the things that we think church has to be doing, and we get so busy, it's too much baggage. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with tradition. I love tradition, but it's got to fit in one suitcase and an overhead. Right? If you're going to go on a journey and you're going to fly on a plane, one suitcase and an overhead bag. And we have to travel as church the same way. If we're carrying 3 big bags of luggage, we're busier managing the luggage than doing the mission. So we have to pay attention. What do we keep? What is essential and necessary? And the rest of it, you got to give to the Rotary Barn and move on. And then Jesus gives instructions. When you enter a house, bless it. Say, peace be on this house and all who live here. Peace, shalom, a wholeness that is just, a peace among all of you. We are called to bless. Blessing is an act of kindness and hope. A clergy friend of mine in Kennebunk is involved in what she's called the Blessing Project. She's encouraging the congregation to look for opportunities to bless people. Don't just count your blessings. Give your blessings. You see, as Pastor Susan says, a blessing is you're giving someone a hopeful vision for their life, for their value, for their future. When you offer them a blessing, blessing is noticing what people do and sharing with them that it matters. Blessing expresses itself when we encourage someone and we send them on their journey and wish them well. We let them know that they're seen and valuable. Friends, it's harvest time. Not a time to pack up or shrink. It's time to remember who we are. Not just a people who gather here, but a people who are sent. We are not a leftover church. We're the 72, right? We're about 72 today, maybe a little more than Jesus sent out. We may not be flashy or famous, just sent. Sent not to conquer, but to bless. Sent not with judgment, but to proclaim peace. The world is not beyond hope, no matter what you read in the newspaper this morning. It's not. It's full of harvest, and God is sending us out into it. Not to argue, not to force, to do justice, while loving kindness, while walking humbly with our God, to love deeply, to live knowing that God is still speaking through every act of compassion and courage. As Sandy told us at the beginning of the service, our hands our feet, our voices, our hugs, our yeses, our nos. 72 went out with almost nothing, just a blessing and a message of peace. And it was enough. You don't need a script or a master's degree. You don't need a title, just a heart that is willing to bless. So when we go forth for this place, look for those opportunities. It can be in a hospital room, a kitchen, standing in a checkout line, a classroom. Walk knowing that the harvest is plentiful. Live like someone who believes that love is stronger than fear. Speak as someone who carries a peace in your presence. Go light, but go bless. And know that Christ walks beside you and ahead of you. Amen.